He beats his child. I'm a child psychologist. I know how to identify a child who's in danger, who's being abused. And I saw Alistair slap Ethan in my home yesterday. Wait, what? Yes, yesterday. I see the way that you're all looking at me. I'm not crazy. I'm not hallucinating. Do I seem unreasonable? I have evidence.
Welcome to the Night Before podcast, a movie podcast where my husband and I talk about the movie or movies we watched the night before. And this is part 2
of a triple feature night.
But don't worry if you didn't listen to part 1. You can go back. You don't have to listen to them in any particular order.
Well, yeah, not to retread too much. We watched 3 movies the night before. And this episode, we're focusing on the last 2. The last episode of our podcast was about the killing of 2 lovers.
Mm-hmm. Excellent film.
We were at Alert Coffee in Tampa, Florida, sitting on a couch, drinking some morning coffee. We are on the same couch.
And the morning has turned into afternoon.
Barely.
They
haven't
just
left.
started pouring beers in the brewery section.
They share a home with both.
They share with Sun Brewery in Tampa, the Tampa location. There's 2.
So we have the pleasure of being their first pours for the day.
Yeah. So we're transitioning from coffee
So we're those people.
to beers. And what are you drinking?
An IPA called We Would Make Great Pets, I believe.
We'll Make Great Pets.
Mm-hmm.
And I am drinking a milkshake IPA.
Nice.
Called Copycat Killer. It's one of my favorites. I don't get it very often. But since it was so early in the day, it's kind of like a blueberry lactose one. It felt appropriate for a early in the day beer.
Okay, cool. So we're here. That's what we do each day. The following day, following a movie we watched the night before, we don't talk about it until we get a chance to sit over breakfast or lunch at some local establishment near us
dinner.
or wherever we're at. What's that?
Sometimes it's late night dinner.
Sometimes it's late if we don't get to it, but we've saved our thoughts. And last night we just had a crazy 3-movie night. We talked a lot more about it in the previous episode, The Killing of 2 Lovers, but we didn't have time to get to the other 2. So this episode we're primarily focusing on
The Woman in the Window.
The Woman in the Window, the recently released Netflix streaming film starring
Amy Adams.
Gary Oldman.
There we got Gary Oldman again.
Gary Oldman's back.
He's back.
Jennifer Jason Leigh, Julianne Moore.
Some great cast.
A huge cast. And also
in general.
Brian Tyree Henry. He's one of the police detectives, who was in Atlanta.
Oh, gotcha.
He was also recently in the new Godzilla film, Godzilla and King Kong, I mean. So, yeah, pretty huge cast that outside of Amy Adams, they all have smaller parts, all those other names we mentioned, including Gary Oldman.
Including Jennifer Jason Leigh. She has a really small part.
Tiny. Barely even in it.
For such a big actress.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that movie in a few minutes. That is, as the recording of this, the #1 streaming movie on Netflix.
It was.
We'll
so we
probably
did it. We
get
watched
into
the number
this
1
one. We're going
streaming movie on Netflix.
We did. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, we watched it.
You're a little quiet.
late.
I can't hear you. You're talking a little quiet.
I'm sorry.
We're sitting on the couch.
We watched the #1 streaming movie on Netflix. We watched it late last night.
It was a late night. It didn't start till like 11 o'clock at night.
We didn't, yeah.
Because it was a triple feature night. Unintentional, not planned.
Not planned at all.
We're just riding that wave, and that's where it took us.
We were riding the do nothing wave yesterday.
Yeah, whatever.
Relax, do
nothing. We started
nothing.
about 5 o'clock-ish. We watched a documentary called Some Kind of Heaven, which we're about to talk about right now.
We are.
We teased it in the previous episode of like we didn't know when we were going to talk about it. We're talking about it moments from now, so stay tuned. moments from now.
I was glued to Some Kind of Heaven.
It was meant to just be.
I was glued to it.
Again,
I
we're getting
was
too early
so
into it here,
intrigued.
but it was.
I did not expect to get that into it.
I wanted to see this movie for months.
I know you've been wanting to see it, and I've been intrigued by it, but I wasn't like anxious to see it. Growing up in Florida, hearing about the Villages your whole life, it's slightly intriguing. It's slightly, should I say it? Slightly disgusting when I think of it, because
I don't know if this is true. I've never done any research facts on it, and I'm not gonna. But I've heard. So the Villages in Central Florida is this retirement community of. It was planned for baby boomers and
to retire.
people retire to kind of. It's a place
Northerners
you can go.
come down is like a heaven.
They call them frogs, I guess, right? You go there till you croak.
Go there till you croak.
That was in the movie. And it's grown. I think it's around 135,000 seniors live there. And it's a little planned
I'm
community.
wondering if you're going to say the statistic that I have in my mind.
Yeah, we said it was a little gross. But they didn't get into this at all, which I was actually
No.
relieved.
They don't get into it. But I have heard it's the highest STD rate in Florida, in the Villages.
Per, like, capita, I guess, per, like, where people live.
I cannot say that's 100% true,
Yeah, I don't know if that's urban myth.
but you
I
hear
don't
that.
know, but you hear it.
A lot of people from up north come down. A lot of people are newly widowed, singles. Even though it's seniors, there is a large singles community there.
Well, think about it. You have a lot of either single seniors because their significant other has deceased.
Right.
And they hinted a little bit about the dating scene and even some getting remarried.
Yeah.
But it never goes on the sexual side, which I was actually relieved.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to hear about that.
We don't.
But
need
we
to.
hear that thing.
You
And
hear a
again,
little bit about it,
but I'm saying in general about STDs in the Villages. You hear it, but that's really what not this movie was
so
about.
a lot that you think it's going to be about is left out, refreshingly, because you think it's going to be about all these seniors like partying and living it up for the end of their lives, and there is a tad bit of that, but it's not about that.
Well, it's showcased as a place for seniors to go have fun, live freely, and enjoy the twilight years of their life.
Which,
In a community that it's not, they even say this in the movie, it's not a gated community. It's a community with gates, meaning like
Anybody can
they
come
do
in and
kind of section themselves off, and it's designed for a certain demographic in mind. But it's in
But
no
they
way.
have everything there where these people don't necessarily ever have to leave, so they kind of call it's like a bubble. You're in a bubble.
You're definitely in a
when
bubble. You
live
ride around
there.
your golf carts.
It's not. There's reality is a little skewed.
Yeah. But it's always been kind of a curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I've driven through the Villages, like traveling. Like you pass, it's even in this is a documentary, by the way. I don't know if we said that much here.
it's-
I've even driven the main highway that passes through the Villages. They have like an overpass and a big sign that says the Villages. Driven through that, I mean, and driving through it on initial glance, you would just think it's some other Florida town.
Right. Or housing development. kind
Housing
of.
area,
But
yes.
It's so big now.
Housing
So
area
big.
because they do have a little manufactured downtown area that's supposed to resemble
Be reminiscent of
the older downtown model.
older towns that people would connect with at that age.
Yeah, they have a made-up history about the area, all to kind of just add to this idea. It's Florida, so everything has to be a little theme
Eccentric.
parky
Yeah.
and yeah, just on that aesthetic. So that's definitely what the Villages is on as an outsider's perspective. As two individuals, to my knowledge, who've never spent any time in the Villages.
No, I've heard about it, especially from. I think my parents who live in West Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
my dad and my stepmom have friends, a lot of people that they know, and they'll correct me if I'm wrong, but that have moved down to the Villages.
Funny,
From conversations over the years, I've heard.
at a previous job, I used to have a coworker who was in his like mid 30s, and him and his fiance or wife, he would tell me, he never went into great details, but he would tell me stories about, hey, what did you do this weekend? Oh, we drive and we hang out in the villages because it's fun. And that's what they did.
Were these young people?
I said they were in their mid 30s.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that.
And that's what they were doing. They would go hang out in the
Interesting.
villages because it's open to anybody.
Do they get free drinks and stuff or something?
No, I think it's because they have that, because that's what even the documentary
vibe.
shows.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe. They have their downtown market and square, which seems to be every weekend night has some sort of
Live music,
activity.
dancing.
It's like a public open area that people are dancing
Yeah.
and there's live music playing, because it's all sort of catering towards this older
manufactured
crowd.
towards this best last years of your life. Kind of.
So the two of them would drive over
Interesting.
and spend the day in the villages, just have fun in their little
Okay.
downtown
You could play
area.
golf, I guess.
Yeah.
You could. So the
So that's my
characters.
only
So
experience with it.
it's
So-
really a character. I mean, it's really a human.
So Some Kind of Heaven follows a handful of
4.
individuals. Yeah.
Particularly for individuals,
Mm-hmm.
and their real personal story,
Mm-hmm.
which I think makes it a better documentary rather than
Of course, yeah.
just this is what's wrong
It's
or
not
right
really
about
it's
the
not really a
villages.
documentary about the villages. It's a documentary about 4 people or
Individuals.
couples that live in the villages.
Right. Well, one couple, one man, and one woman.
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay.
So we have. Should we just start going through the people?
Just quick. Yeah, I mean, I don't want
So
to
we
get
have
into the
Barbara.
weeds.
Yeah, that's true. We're not doing this whole episode. We have Barbara. She's a widower. She has moved down. She initially moved down with her husband, who has passed away. And you really see you feel so sad. She feels so sad, and it is palpable. Like, she is so sad. And there's a transition in her throughout the documentary, but her depression is so real.
Well, her story, the
So
point of her
real.
story is, which it's interesting, it's compelling, is this isn't the heaven God sent for her, that it's presented as she misses home.
And they basically sold everything to come
Yeah.
down, and I think she's from Massachusetts, maybe, and she really doesn't even, she's the only one that works full time at the villages.
Yeah.
And she does not have enough money to, sell and go back home. So she is trying to figure out how to make this life work for her, but she is seriously depressed in the beginning.
Yeah, she's just
With
kind
the
of searching
situation.
and
She's been there a long time, but never, not so long. I think she was at like month 4 without her husband.
yeah, the villages are just sort of, it's not the place that she hoped it would be.
Right.
And that's kind of the story. And then they kind of counter that with another story. I think you said his name was Dennis. He's the guy who's been a womanizer his whole life.
A bachelor,
Bachelor.
womanizer.
And he's living in his van. He doesn't even live in the
He
villages.
doesn't even live at the villages.
He's living in his van just looking for a sugar mama. Like, he wants to find he calls them
A
chicks.
rich
He wants to find an
woman.
old chick that he can
Shack up with.
shack up with and be their handyman, but then live in the house.
But have a place to live, have a woman to take care of him.
And he has his leathered
Leathered, sun
skin, just very
As many old men do
yeah,
in Florida.
but definitely like a throwback to an older era gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
And he's
very forthright about his want to find a rich woman.
and
or a
he's-
wealthy
I'm
woman.
not saying his storyline is comical in it, but because he definitely has some humanity in him and some issues.
It's so sad too.
But at the same
I
time,
was struck at the
you're
raw
just baffled
sadness.
at a person in their 80s still living the way he does. And that's just intriguing. Because I think our
Well,
perception
it's
of...
like never committing, never working through something, never being loyal to something, and then what ends up happening when you're 80 years old.
And maybe that's one thing I like about this documentary. I really liked it. But again, I really wanted to see it to begin with. that's what I like about the people they chose, maybe except for our depressed widower.
Oh, I liked her
No,
because it was so real.
No, I'm saying apart from her.
Right. Oh, okay.
What I like about it, because that is what you would expect for a documentary like this.
Yeah.
A person like her.
Like her. Mm-hmm.
Of course you get it. Of course there's going to be people who aren't happy, who are depressed.
Their spouse died.
Yeah. What I liked about this is the other three challenge, find people, and again, these probably are the outliers of the individuals of the villages.
I wouldn't jump to say that.
No, I would. I don't think there's many living in their van in the villages.
Probably not, but I think there's a lot of men like that
There
in
might
the world.
be men like that. But that's what I'm
and
saying.
women, maybe.
Our perception of older people is that, yeah, they might be dancing at the town square. They might be going to the Parrot Heads margarita hangout that they do, right?
Club, Parent Head Club.
Yeah. And dancing and even trying to, like, start little relationships and whatnot. Like, they're all just looking to have fun, and they're a little eccentric in that regard. But our dentist guy living in the van, he's sort of definitely extreme. So the challenge is you don't think grandpas living that way for the most part.
No.
And then the other couple that is really the sort of centerpiece of it all, that have been married for 47 years.
Anne and Reggie.
And they're just like holding on to their relationship because Reggie, his mental state is questionable, but he also has a dependency on drugs.
He's become dependent on drugs since he's been at the villages.
Yeah, and we're not talking like prescription drugs. It's like marijuana.
It's hallucinogenic.
Cocaine.
Yeah.
Like just drugs teenagers and 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds do.
So he has discovered this and has become this super eccentric, and it has messed with his mind so much. You know, he's just really not all there during a lot of the documentary. And his wife is extremely committed to him. And her sadness with it all is very real. And he doesn't even understand how it's affecting her at first, or really ever, maybe. And he even goes as far as to say, you know, he deserves to live this kind of life. It doesn't really matter how she feels about it at first. And you can really connect with her.
Yeah.
Because she is just so lonely within a relationship. So lonely.
Yeah. And he's out like running around the golf course and no shirt, doing weird antics and stuff. And doing, you know, being wild and eccentric in the swimming pools and just kind of alienating himself not only from her, but everyone around him in the villages. Yeah. And
because he's gone more off the deep end than the typical people that are like partying and having a good time.
Yeah.
In the villages.
Yeah. So that's what I like about it is the people they chose. I'm sure they filmed a number of people.
Right.
And a number of stories, but these were the ones that popped out. And in no way ever do they come off as, even Reggie, who is the more eccentric person, it is told through a sympathetic lens of his mental struggles and his substance abuse struggles. And again, that's what I meant by even challenges.
I don't think they're never making fun of them.
No. No one's made a comical character. So focus on these people with struggles.
There is a great line that is created where they show them as being eccentric, but they don't show them as being like circus clowns. You know, they don't exploit. They don't exploit their eccentricities.
It's all told with sympathy for the individuals, keeping them human. And it also doesn't, which would be easy to do, it would also be easy to bash the villages and bash the concept and to say how ridiculous this place is. I mean, that's a tone or angle they could take. And the filmmakers never took it.
They never bash it, but you don't walk away from the film saying like, "Man, I want to move there when I become 70."
No, they
You
say
definitely
they show like I mean,
you
it's even in
definitely
the title.
should see the reality of it not being heaven.
This is not the paradise promised.
Right. Yeah, you don't walk away feeling great about the villages, but
No,
you
not at all.
don't walk away feeling like it was bashed either.
No, so I mean but so they chose to pick characters or individuals who had unique stories and unique situations, but still told it with some compassion and left them all with dignity, which I thought was good. And it was much better than I thought it would end up being too. It's definitely not one of these. It's definitely not one of these just, oh, let's have a good laugh and watch the film about the old people at the retirement town.
Yeah, no.
So,
I mean, it's incredibly sad.
I don't think incredibly sad.
I do. I thought it was incredibly sad. I mean, Anne, I felt so sad for her because you have to think she's been in this for 47 years and you think you want her to be in this prime of her life, like the last years of her life, maybe. And her husband has just gone off the deep end, and the loneliness she shows, and she's not acting, is so sad.
I know. I agree. But I think that's a takeaway from this documentary is that that utopia doesn't exist anywhere.
No.
That whether it's a retirement
Marriages have their ups and downs.
retirement home, a
whether
retirement
you've been together
community,
for 5 years or
whether
40 years.
Yeah, you've gone off living in paradise. It's going to
Right.
be, and that the fact that this is some sort of manufactured heaven.
Well, that they're selling. That's what they're selling.
Yeah, that you don't. It's really not what it is. So
Right.
I don't think we need to go too long on it, but
It's worth the watch.
Hulu, it's streaming. We wanted to see it when it came out. It played at a local theater for like a week. We missed it. It was actually at a local film festival here, but it was still during COVID, so it was one of those film festivals streaming only.
Well, that was
Film
last year at COVID.
Well, during the
Gasparilla?
spring.
Okay.
No. It was a different film
Oh,
festival.
different film.
Or it might have been the Gasparilla, but it was streaming only. We missed the chance to see that streaming. Then we're just kind of watching, and then all of a sudden it popped over to Hulu.
So
And
we
even if you
watched it.
don't have a Hulu subscription, you watch a couple ads at the beginning and you're in. So,
It's good. It's worth the watch. It's a great, especially if you like documentaries.
Yeah.
It's a good It's a good, well shot documentary.
and again, it's not quite in widescreen. It's in like that pseudo 4:3 ratio, which we talked about.
I never noticed that stuff,
Killing of Two Lovers.
We had a double 4:3 ratio night.
Yeah, and we only put Some Kind of Heaven on because we were sort of transitioning to movie night. We were organizing
Making
some
dinner.
things, making dinner, getting things
Organized for the kids.
organized for the kids, and we put it on. And I think even my oldest was like watching it, and at times he was a little perplexed at what he was seeing on the screen of this.
Yeah.
He said a few little comments. I can't remember,
Most teenagers are
but it
when
was.
they see.
But it wasn't
that.
judgmental. It was just like, oh my gosh, I can't. Who are these
What
people?
is
Like, what are
happening?
they doing?
Are these real people? Yes, they are.
So yeah, those are someone's grandmas and grandpas. But anyway, let's switch over because we're about at the halfway mark.
Okay.
We watched another movie in our triple feature.
This was our last movie of the night.
Our movie of the night, we already said it last episode, was The Killing of Two Lovers.
That was
We
our
have
main feature.
The previous episode, part one of this is dedicated all to that movie because we had a lot of things to
We
say about
loved
it. Then at 11 o'clock, we're like, let's keep this party going.
Well, you said that. I
The
didn't.
Villages style.
I was
like,
going both ways, and you just, bam, put it on.
I
It
was-
was kind of like, we're doing this.
I was riding the power of the
So
Villages.
I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this.
And we jumped over to the Netflix streaming film, The Woman in the Window, as we mentioned at the
The
top
woman
of
in
this.
the window. Mm-hmm.
So let's just jump in. This is another movie a lot of people are talking about it on the streaming.
I like Amy Adams.
We'd watched the trailer a couple times.
So it's about Amy Adams is agoraphobic.
Yeah. Oh, and on this one, I will say,
We
It's-
are not going to
No.
give away the ending.
no, I think we have to.
We do?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. I'm going to say this. Sometimes we're a little more delicate in our stories, but this is widely available. It's streaming. It's the #1 trending thing on Netflix right now. If you haven't
So,
seen it,
If you haven't seen it, stop the podcast.
Watch it real quick.
And then come back to the podcast.
come back. Or if you're not interested in it, I'll just listen
'Cause
to
we
us.
will-
I don't think we're going
so
to
we're-
fully spoil it, but I think to really get into whether it's good or not, or
We
our
have
thoughts on
to
good,
talk about the ending.
the ending, I think, is the deal breaker. Not the ending itself, but the final act is the deal breaker of whether this is good or bad.
Well, I agree about that for sure. I just didn't. Typically, we don't give it away, but you're right.
I
It
think
is
depending
very
on the types of
widely
movies.
available.
If it's a smaller movie like Limbo, we did on that episode, or The Killing of Two Lovers, because you and I sometimes, I think, have some of our better conversations post-recording. We talk about some of the more spoilerly details.
Right.
Maybe one day we'll find a way to put that stuff out and record it too. But this one, I think you're either in or you're out for the woman in the window. And if you're in, you're going to be seeing it by the time this episode's out anyway.
Okay, let's do it. So this woman is agoraphobic.
And when we get to the point
in the
where
beginning, you know this
Yeah.
in the very beginning.
And
She suffers from agoraphobia, which is she
And,
can't go outside.
she can't go outside because she's had a past
She
traumatic
has
event,
anxiety. There's a past traumatic event that has caused this.
which they reveal all that in the third act. So when we get close to the end of the third act and talking about those things, we'll also give people a heads up, like, hey, we're entering some spoiler territory.
Okay.
So we'll also, if you can still listen for a little bit.
Okay. So
Yeah. Agoraphobic, Amy Adams can't leave.
can't leave.
She's a child psychiatrist,
She's a child psychiatrist. She
but I guess works from home.
works from home. She hasn't been agoraphobic her whole life.
No.
You find out very early on that she's separated from her husband, or you think she's separated from her husband, and she has a 8 or 9 year old little girl because she talks on the phone to them, and you find out they're separated. It seems like they still have a good relationship, but you assume, well, it's not working out so well because she's agoraphobic. She does not have her daughter ever.
Mhm.
The husband and the daughter are
No, yeah.
away
Yeah,
from her.
yeah, she's separated. That's fine.
Yeah. So, so she develops a relationship early on with a neighbor across the street from her. Like, are they in New York City or something?
Yeah, it's
Do you
Manhattan.
feel it's Manhattan?
They say to Manhattan. No,
You're
the
right.
point is, I mean, I think it's simple. She's agoraphobic. It's Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, the first act of this movie, where she's just, but not to the caliber of, say, a Rear Window movie, but it's the same premise. She's stuck in her home, and she just watches the world outside her window, and a
And
couple,
what's going on in other people's
Yeah.
apartments.
That's all she does. She's kind of like snoops on people.
And she really becomes like intertwined in other people's lives.
And a new couple moves in across the street, played by Gary Oldman. His wife and his son.
Teenage son.
Yeah. And it's quickly apparent that there is domestic issues within this home. And because of her state being agoraphobic, and this is the first part, which the movie does for the first 2/3, is you realize you have a very unreliable narrator
Right.
in Amy Adams.
So it's all from her perspective.
Yeah, but you can't trust her perspective at all.
You can't trust her perspective because she drinks a lot
She drinks, she takes medication.
every night. She takes a lot of medication.
Which they say repeatedly in the movie, you shouldn't be mixing this medication with alcohol.
Right, right.
And she continually
So you can tell
passes
she's
out at night.
on anti-anxiety, antidepressants, a bunch of different medication, and then she's drinking, over a bottle of wine a night.
But she's also paranoid. Her psychiatrist that we see at the beginning of the movie, he tells her, she confesses later to her husband on the phone that she doesn't even trust her psychiatrist, that he's trying to overdrug her and control her. So she has these, not only anxieties, but she has these paranoias as well.
Paranoias, and she's also, she's not being completely honest with her psychiatrist.
With anybody.
About how much she's drinking on the medications, and with anybody about how much she's drinking and whatnot.
just
She's
in
really
general.
hiding a lot of her behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows she's agoraphobic, but she's kind of hiding what she's doing throughout the day as far as her pill taking and drinking.
And it's basically a movie of at least the first 2/3 of Amy Adams walking around her big, spacious, like
Enormous.
brownstone
big.
style
Yes.
Manhattan home in a house robe, drinking, taking pills, and peeking out her window and getting freaked out.
Yeah, and can I say that I love how Amy Adams plays this, because in her clothing that she wears, in her drinking, in her pill popping, because it's so like on point. It's so on point of her her behaviors, her look. They don't do the like gorgeous Amy Adams
No.
that drinks wine all night. You're not going to look gorgeous if you don't leave the house and so they're very realistic on how she looked, on how her emotions. Anyway, I liked that aspect of it.
Yeah, she's not glamorous at all. I think she plays it fine and well.
Mm-hmm.
She wears, it's very subtle makeup, only enough for like camera.
Yeah, they don't glamorize her at all,
No.
which is good.
And
It's no Angelina Jolie.
yeah, and for just her part of being the shut-in and the kind of unreliable, paranoid, anxious narrator. I think any of her performance or her choices are fine, because you can easily say, well, yeah, because she's not in a right frame of mind ever.
No.
So she's fine there, I think. And then the movie eventually unravels, as they even show you in the trailer. The 15-year-old boy comes and kind of befriends her. He seems to be having trouble with his dad and his family. And then right after that, the mom, who played by Julianne Moore, who she thinks is the mom, Julianne Moore, shows up as well and talks about, just hints at,
They become quick friends.
in like one afternoon.
I know, and you thought that was slightly unrealistic. I didn't think as much. I feel like because I didn't find it that weird as you did, because a woman moving in with an unhappy marriage and a agoraphobic person who basically has no friends, I feel like you are looking to befriend the woman around the same age as you across the street.
But
you
Amy
know?
Adams was my problem, though. Amy Adams, everything else in her character is very untrusting of any other person she meets. And here's a complete stranger who barges into her home
And asks her very poignant questions.
and asks her very poignant personal questions, and then even makes snide remarks about her responses.
Right.
I felt all that was totally unbelievable. That I don't think Amy Adams' character would be that trusting that quick to a stranger,
Right.
and that revealing. Though she tries to change the subject every once in a while. I was
think
like,
eventually we should say, based on her
no,
personality, that it's
no.
time to
Over
go.
the course of a couple days, or even weeks, I'd be, yeah, that's fine. Like
Okay.
they built it up,
Yeah,
built her trust.
I can see that.
This was in like matter of minutes.
Over an evening, I guess. It seems like they hung out for a while. They were drinking wine and
But it was that afternoon.
Yeah.
Because later in the evening, Gary Oldman, the husband, comes by and says, "Did my wife come by here, or did anybody from my family come see you?"
and she lies. She says
And she said no.
Which I thought
No one did.
I thought that was confusing, but we figure out why later. Why it's all
And so then the
confusing.
big thing is, through her window peeping, she noticed some yelling and arguing at the Gary Oldman house across the way, and sees Julianne Moore get murdered, stabbed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again, that's even in the trailer.
Yeah.
And then the big twist, again, that they show in the trailer, they set all this up in the trailer,
Right.
is that Julianne Moore was not Gary Oldman's wife or the kid's mother. That is played by Jennifer Jason Leigh. And now our unreliable narrator, who's already kind of struggling with reality, she kind of just spirals further.
Right, because nobody believes her. She knows what she's seen. The police don't believe her. She's just kind of like passed off as the crazy paranoid
And Gary Oldman's
agoraphobic
getting
lady.
more agitated and angry. He switches between like just angry and hostile towards her in their encounters, and just upset. Like, just please leave us alone, please.
By the way, this was a much better role for me for Gary Oldman than in Mank. I do think he's a phenomenal actor now that I can. Not that he wasn't in Mank, but he played this role really well.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was equally.
I mean, he plays most roles he does well, but
he was kind of scary in it.
He was. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time,
protective
as well. And so here's my thoughts on this movie. I did not love this film very much. Did not like it very much at all.
I liked it a
I
lot.
liked the middle of it. I think as just a basic whodunit paranoid thriller, not bad. I felt the first half of just kind of getting into this realm of Julianne Moore and Amy Adams and Garrett, like meeting all the characters. There were too many things that were too weird and far-fetched to grab. Like the 15-year-old boy just barges into her house, basically.
And starts confiding in her.
Starts confiding in her. She starts confiding in him. And
mothering
again,
him.
Right upon meeting one another. And
Which is unrealistic.
And he even says...
But my thoughts were, this is a setup.
Well, no, of course, you're watching it as some sort of setup.
Like you said I almost believed you. Like, this is a grand... He says while we're watching it.
In the first act.
This is a grand scheme to get her to go outside. And I started thinking, well, all of those weird things that you're saying make sense. If he's pushing his relationship, pushing himself on her, not sexually, but pushing into her house and the wife and I'm like, she's pretending she got stabbed to get her to come over and save her and leave the house. I'm like, you're right.
Which it does work. She does leave the house.
She does.
It does work. But no, that was one thought as I'm thinking about this. Oh, is this knowing everything doesn't feel right in the first act? Because even the boys' questions are a little pointed and inappropriate, and there's all these red flags going off.
I mean, this is, and that is the foreshadowing, the hint, is he is a little off, the boy.
Well, he stutters and he stampers.
He looks a little not quite right.
But even when I'm watching the first half, the first quarter, the first scene, the first act, I'm like, all these red flags are going off. This boy comes in your house. He's asking these questions about, do you live alone? What do you do?
But how can you not like it? Because at the end, it all makes sense.
No,
that it was like that.
No, again, it makes sense a bit. But
so why does it bother you?
But I'm saying, I'm watching the first part.
I respect the fact that it does.
No, I'm watching the
why
first
does
part.
It bother you?
And I'm thinking, as just an adult, if a 15-year-old stranger comes in my home, one, I'm probably not going to invite them into my house. And when he even says, hey, I'm 15 and a half, I'd be like, hey, cool. You probably need to go.
Well, I said that as the time
home.
She was spending with a 15-and-a-half-year-old boy. I was like, that is not a smart choice for a grown woman to be alone in her home with a 15-year-old
well, even thank
boy
God,
that's a stranger.
I felt, thank God,
in the
not
middle, a good choice.
Later on in the movie, when Gary Oldman, the father, confronts her, because again, he comes over one time and the boy's back in her house. Mm-hmm. Gary Oldman comes barging in and yells at Amy Adams saying,
leave my son alone.
He's a 15-year-old boy. What are you doing hanging out with my 15-year-old son in your home?
And she is never, it's not a sexual thing.
No. That's not even there.
But people could perceve it as.
Yeah. So that
if you didn't know.
In the beginning, between the exchange with the boy, the exchange with Julianne Moore, all of it I could tell was, this is all part of the storytelling to get all the information out. Because the Julianne Moore scene and between the boy scene, we get all the exposition we need and backstory. you know, that's going on here. So you see that's part of the reason there. And I was trying to make sense, like, oh, maybe they're just trying to, this is an elaborate mind game that maybe the psychiatrist has set up to get her out of the place.
Then it started making sense to me when you said that. I believed your theory for a little while.
It was just a theory.
I mean, it was the only thing that really made sense at that point in the first half of the movie, really.
And then as it rolled into the second act, I was liking it then. Not because of my theory, but it sort of settled into this, what is the reality story? And
we haven't mentioned that guy in the basement that
the tenant.
She has a tenant that lives in the basement of her house.
Yeah, he kind of looks after her a little bit. Though I felt he was the
A
one
distracting character.
I did not like him at all, because sometimes he was very nice and considerate to her. Like, hey, I'm going to take the
Sometimes
trash
he
out
was
for
scary,
you.
but I think that was part of it. I think it was part of it. To me, it was like, because you remember hearing her voice a woman's voice down in the basement. So I thought, well, no, this girl was a girlfriend of his that he had down there that came up, befriended her, and confused her or acted like she was someone else.
No, I'm not saying his role as a character was.
I liked it, but it was a confusing
I'm saying
role.
his style.
But again,
Sometimes he was sympathetic.
Once you know the end, I think it makes sense.
But I'm talking about him, the tenant. Like, other times he would just yell and be hostile towards her and almost threatening and menacing to Amy Adams. And I'm like, why is this guy flying off the handle so quick to Amy Adams? He has no reason to. And I just felt it created unneeded tension that they were trying to hint at. Oh, is the tenant downstairs, is he one of the suspects in all this craziness? Like, how do you explain what's all these things are happening? Was my
Right.
was
Did
and
he
I was
have some part in it?
yeah, and then the movie was trying to make everyone a suspect. Is she crazy? Is this all in her mind? Is Gary Oldman really the bad husband? Is Jennifer Jason Leigh in it on somehow? Like, what's the deal?
Right.
And you have the police detective played by Brian Tyree Henry, who borders between like sympathetic and
He was really patient.
apprehensive at the same time.
Yeah. Apprehensive, but patient and
Kind of giving her the benefit of the
played
doubt.
a really good role, I felt like.
And so that second act, I was like, okay, you got me back on board. I'm not hating it now. But they were kind of trying to distract you from everything. The reality of what was it, maybe. And you even getting led to believe that maybe this is one of those it's all in her mind type deals. And then I guess this is where we're starting to tiptoe into spoiler territory.
Right.
They reveal her traumatic experience that made her
agoraphobic. That she has, her husband and daughter are actually dead. And throughout the movie, she talks to them a lot.
Which adds to the unreliable narrator, which adds to this is probably, and she even has a realization, a memory of, okay, I did kill them because it's her fault. Car accident.
She's a car accident that was her fault, and her husband and little girl die. And since this accident, she's basically lost grip with reality.
Yeah.
You know, through self-medication, through punishing herself, basically.
And so that, I feel, decent, good movie plot premise. To even say she is unreliable, unstable. We might never know the full truth, but we know this is really about a story about a woman dealing with grief and regret and guilt. That is not what this movie is.
No. So you think, okay, at some point you think this was all made up in her head. Like, and they lead her to believe because of her medication, alcoholism,
And
kind
even
of
she comes to that. Even
psychological
she
state
comes
that
to this
she's
point of
saying, "I'm sorry, you're right. I'm
I've
wrong.
lost grip on all
I've
things.
lost grip on all things,
and I'm going to kill myself.
and I'm going to commit suicide." So she starts planning her death.
And then she makes a startling revelation at the very end, right before she does the deed.
I have to say, this movie plays out, the second half plays out to me like a Sylvia Plath novel. I couldn't stop thinking about
Well,
that.
up until the third act.
Up until the third act.
That's what I'm saying. It
as
could have been a
she-
great Sylvia Plath movie,
Yeah.
thematic film.
Well, the descent into madness.
Yes.
And then ending in suicide. I just was like flashing to the.
But that is not how movies get to be number one streaming choice on Netflix.
That is true.
Which is the problem. So and all of us are kind of left with the question, well, who was Julianne Moore?
Right.
We know that mystery is not solved, and they have to solve it. And she does realize she took a photograph earlier in the movie
Of her cat.
and the wine glasses that they're sharing, and she does see the reflection in.
That Juliana Moore was an actual person.
Yeah.
That she did not conjure this up or this person
And that
up
it was
in her head.
and that is the mother of the boy, but she had kind of had issues as a young mother and was out of the picture and was trying to get back
So
to her
goes
son.
downstairs, sleeps with the tenant.
So she was with the tenant, and the tenant kind of realized who she was, that she was kind of messed up in this kind of chasing after her ex-husband and son, and kind of kicked her out.
Kicked her out. So instead of leaving, she comes upstairs and befriends.
Yeah.
I know you're going to say it's mainstream. I loved that.
No. That part. No, that part is still great.
I did not expect that.
No,
I love it when I don't expect
Well,
it.
I thought that might have been her when you heard the laughing around. But I thought to myself, you know what? This can work. This is my dialogue watching. Okay, cool. She can still, not that I want to see a person commit suicide, but Amy Adams can still live in this torment and realize that this person was real. And it could still be this question of, well, why did she imagine this murder and this thing in her kind of paranoid delusion slip on reality? That she kind of put all these pieces in there, right?
You're a father. I would think that you would want to help a child. If my husband were here,
Okay. We got to do this quick. We're almost out of
Okay.
space. We had to pause because we're running out of space on our card. My problem is Act 3. Her descent into madness is one thing, right? But then they reveal, oh, you know, the kid you haven't been paying attention to the whole time? He's the murderer.
Well, I suspected that a little bit.
Yeah. And that it's Gary Oldman protecting his son who has these murderous tendencies.
Right.
He likes to watch people die. He's still figuring it out, but he's sort of the serial killer in the making kid.
Right.
He killed Julianne Moore, his mom, his real mom. He killed this other woman in Boston,
Right. Which is why they moved.
which is why the family moved. Killed the tenant downstairs. And now it's this final battle between him and Amy Adams.
Well, and it's Amy Adams' redemption of, like, I knew something was. She didn't know that, but it wasn't her just being crazy
it's her redemption. Oh, I guess she wasn't mad.
She
In no way I feel resolves her feelings towards her family, her husband and
No.
daughter's
That's why I
death.
didn't like the very ending, because
it doesn't connect.
It doesn't connect. The end doesn't connect with the movie, but I didn't mind that being what it was. I didn't mind that at all. I just didn't like how it ended. How she was like, okay, I'm over my agoraphobia all of a sudden, because it doesn't resolve the fact that her
Nothing gets resolved. It cheapens.
husband and child are still dead, and she still
It cheapens,
feels at fault for
Yeah,
that.
it cheapens the whole movie. I feel
Yeah.
any depth the movie might have. Instead, it just becomes this slasher movie thriller. And with that, we might have to just end this. I don't recommend this movie. Do you
I recommend it. I recommend it. I don't think it's the best movie in the world, but I definitely enjoyed it and recommend it for
Okay.
sure.